Coming up on Good Morning Indian Country, the University of Kansas is hosting a symposium discussing how artificial intelligence, data systems, and digital infrastructure intersects with tribal sovereignty.
And two Native lawmakers from New Mexico are calling for a sweeping investigation into forced sterilizations of Indigenous women, a common practice during the 1970s through the Indian Health Service.
And hundreds turned out for an annual Native American Cultures Festival on Sunday at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Good Morning Indian Country. I'm Shia Blackcloud.
And I'm Allison Levering. We're coming to you live from our studio inside of Stauffer Flint Hall at the University of Kansas.
The KU Office of Sovereign Partnerships and Indigenous Initiatives is hosting a two-day symposium exploring the artificial intelligence, data, and information infrastructure are an important part of tribal sovereignty. GMIC's Caden Baird has been covering the event today and spoke with event's keynote speaker on why these topics are important.
I think it is one of those critical FTEs that you should have.
The event this year's focus is on AI and tribal data sovereignty, which are two really pinnacle areas of focus and topic throughout Indian country. So it's amazing to have students here, data practitioners, academics and scholars and representatives from tribal communities around the Southern Plains here to learn more about AI and issues facing tribes with respect to their data sovereignty.
Drums echoed through the halls of the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art on Sunday, making the 16th annual Native American Cultures Festival. This annual event draws hundreds of visitors each year, and this year was no exception. Attendees immerse themselves in Native American art, culture, and traditions through a full day of live performances, demonstrations, and hands-on art activities, and gallery experiences. The live performance was accompanied by the drumming and singing of Bad War Cloud, and the grand entry was led by the Haskell Indian Nations University Veterans Color Guard, along with the Royal Valley Native American singers and dancers of USD 337, and the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation Reservation from Mayetta, Kansas. Attendees were able to take part in loom weaving experiences, beading demonstrations, and hands-on art activities. The food and drinks inspired by Indigenous cultures were also served, and visitors had the opportunity to learn about the works of renowned contemporary Native artists.
After a chilly start to March here in Lawrence, we're tracking changing conditions as we head through the week. Emma, what can we expect across Douglas County tonight and into tomorrow?
Thanks, Shia. Well, unfortunately, it does look like we will be stuck with some of those chillier temperatures for the rest of this week, but warmer temperatures are luckily on the way. More for that later. Talking specifically about this week, a strong variation in temperature is going to continue through the end of next week, ranging from the high 40s all the way up to almost 80 degrees late next week. This week as well, a pretty healthy mix of clouds and sunshine. Today is really the last day of all clouds we're going to see, at least until later this weekend when scattered thunderstorms are going to start to poke their way through. Along with that, scattered storms over the next 2 weeks as well. A couple sprinklings here and there throughout the weeks will bring lots of rain as we've continued to see so far. Wednesday's forecast, high of 53 degrees, just a little bit of a rise from earlier this week. Cloudy skies all day long with a small chance of rain happening in those early afternoon hours. Average wind speed is around 8 miles per hour, but can range from 5 to 10 miles per hour. Taking a look now at our hourly forecast, at 12 p.m. we're going to be at around 48 degrees, rising up to 50 degrees by 2 p.m. By 5 p.m. we're up to 51, and that's where we're going to cap off for the day, is between that 5 to 8 p.m. range, as by 8 p.m. we've dropped back down to 46 degrees. Our wind speeds are also going to echo that 5 mile per hour speeds at 12 p.m. up to 6 by 2 p.m. By 5, we've dropped back down to 3 miles per hour, continuing onwards through the night. Taking a look at Wednesday night's forecast, a low of 41 degrees, not too much variation from the day. Cloudy skies are continuing all through the night with light wind speeds averaging around 2 miles per hour. Thursday's forecast now, a high of 66 degrees. We've bumped up just a little bit. Sunny skies all day long, which is going to be quite a relief from the cloudy days we've been seeing lately. Average wind speeds as well, averaging around 7 miles per hour. Now coming up in a little bit, we'll talk about the national weather outlook all across the country for the next 3 days. But for now, back to you, Shia and Allison.
Thanks, Emma. We'll show you later in the show with a look at weather from across Indian country.
Good Morning Indian
But
Country
in
is
ni-
supported by Press Forward, the nationwide initiative strengthening communities through local news.
Welcome back. Earlier today, I had the opportunity to talk with Rhonda McBride, a reporter with KNBA in Alaska. She's featured on the new documentary, Lost Women of Alaska. Now, McBride is not Indigenous, but has worked as an ally in Alaska since 1988, covering rural Alaska and Alaska Native issues. Now, Rhonda, thank you for joining us. Now, this series has heavy subject matter as it informs viewers of the atrocities committed in Anchorage back in 2019 pertaining to MMIP cases. The series itself was produced by Octavia Spencer, streaming on HBO Max, and focuses on the disappearances of Native women and a potential serial killer. From your experience, what is important context about missing murdered Indigenous women and people crisis in Alaska that viewers in the lower 48 should understand?
I have been a reporter in Alaska since 1997, and I started out in a very small community called Bethel. It's about 500 miles west of Anchorage, and there are no roads there. The only way that you're going to get there is to fly there or take a boat there, and it's easier to fly. But when you have to kind of understand the isolation. And back when I first came, there really was no focus on missing Indigenous women. And it happened all the time. And in fact, I remember when I first came to Bethel, and I really wasn't familiar with the culture or the people. I was at a teeny tiny public radio and TV station. And I recall a case where a family member called me and said, "Would you make some announcements on the news? Would you say something about this person?" And I talked with our station managers, and I said, what do we do with missing people? And what I mean, do we do stories about that? And because it happens so often, a lot of people go missing. And they said, well, if the police say are investigating it, then maybe do a story. And so I told the woman, well, I don't think I talked with the police, and they think that she's just a runaway, and that that she maybe went to Anchorage or somewhere like that. And so I didn't do a story on it. And of course, to this day, I just totally regret that, because that woman is still missing. And something terrible happened to her. I mean, if you start looking into her story, there were things leading up to that. And I think that's how people kind of treated missing Native women for many, many, many years. And one case I covered, it was very dramatic. There was a very violent man named Joshua Wade, and he was kind of uh, a low life drug dealer, and he was accused of murdering a Native woman named Della Brown. She had passed out in the street, and he showed her body off to his friends. He literally brought them to look at her and was like kind of proud and and bragged about killing her. And so that went to court, and in the end, he was acquitted. And Della Brown's murderer, there was no justice for Della Brown. And then a few years pass by, and another woman is murdered. She happens to be a white woman. But of course, I don't, police, went did an amazing search, and they did a wonderful job of finally bringing him to justice. But of course, the relatives of Della Brown wondered, why Della Brown didn't get justice, why there wasn't attention. Of course, by that time, the police really believed that Joshua Wade did, in fact, murder Della Brown. But the reason I think that Joshua Wade got off was that the prosecution in that case wasn't strong. They didn't put the A team on the case. They put a young, inexperienced prosecutor on the case. So, there are lots of reasons why things fall through the crack. I'm going to have to stop this. This is my insulin pump. But,
For sure. Take your
it
break.
just
That's fine. Yeah.
so, but anyway, it's it just beeped. I forgot to turn it back on. But anyway, you could probably find lots of pictures. If you Google Joshua Wade, you'll see pictures of Joshua Wade, Della Brown. But I guess it was just such a travesty that Joshua Wade got off and killed again. And so when Brian Smith, the serial killer that is featured in this 3-part series, appears on the scene again, he's a killer who knows that he can target Native women because they're vulnerable. And it's sort of, for me, seeing that happen is like history repeating itself, another cycle of this. But we really wouldn't have known about this case had there not been a sex worker who was suspicious and stole his cell phone and copied footage on it and gave it to police that showed him actually committing these murders. One of them was involved a woman from a small village, which was not far from the area where I initially worked in Bethel, a tiny little village called Eek. It's on the coast of Alaska, but you see him murdering her in a hotel room, telling her, you don't see him actually, but you hear his voice and you see what he's doing to her, choking her, torturing her, telling her to die. You're officially notified that you're being serial killed. And that's one thing about this series is they had the potential to really exploit this because this was really, really graphic. And in court, when they didn't even show the footage to the people that had gathered in the courtroom. The monitor was turned away only so that the jury could see it and the people involved with the case, but you could still hear it. And talking with some jury members about it, they just say even it's been a while, but they still have nightmares about what they saw in that footage. So this series could have been very graphic. It could have been, and it was kind of what you fear about these kind of reality shows is that they turn into kind of what the term is coined murder porn. And I think a lot of people are really grateful that they did a very discreet job. And yet, when you think about this series, if you've watched it, I know the story, and I couldn't go to sleep that night after watching it. I was up all night, just still shaken by it. And I know, just from having covered these kinds of stories, that this series is going to traumatize a lot of people, and probably through Indian country, if people have missing people and in their family. And in Alaska, I would say that most Alaska Natives have someone in their family that's gone missing. and not necessarily through murder, but Alaska is a very extreme environment. People go on snow machine trips and get lost in blizzards. Uh, People have boating accidents, plane accidents. So a lot of, and maybe their relatives are never found. So a lot of people carry that trauma. And of course, there's a lot of people who are missing, uh, that are vulnerable people. And so families always carry that trauma, that worry about that relative. So I know that every time I would do one of these stories, uh, that people that were listening might be traumatized by it because they would relive that. And definitely at the trial, the families that were there, oh, it was just really hard for them. Um, in fact, it's kind of funny, Alaska is such a small world. It's a big state, but it's a small world. And my next door neighbor was related to Veronica Abowchuk, one of the victims of Brian Stephen Smith. And so through them, I got to know a little bit of her story. And she's also from the same region that I worked in as a reporter back in the late 1980s and 1990s. So, I guess you could say that two of his victims, Brian Smith's victims, were Yupik people. And the Yupik region of Alaska is a beautiful place. Their language and the culture is still very much alive. People hunt and fish. So there's just so many things that when stories like this happen, that people don't know in the history of these women.
And what an impactful conversation. We'll have more on Rhonda on our Facebook page at GMIC and on next week's show. And for those who haven't seen the series, Lost Women of Alaska is now streaming on HBO Max and Investigation Discovery, where you can see Rhonda sharing her side of that investigation.
Thank you to the Henry Luce Foundation for their support of Good Morning Indian Country.
Welcome back to Good Morning Indian Country. I'm Emma Coffey, back for more weather. This time we're taking a look at our national weather outlook for the next couple of days. As we can see here in this kind of green dotted area, that's our precipitation going to start to make its way through most of the day Tuesday, which so far we've seen. Our low and high pressure systems are going to start to mix just a little bit in the mid-east area as well, just because that's where our weather is starting to collide just a little bit. Now as we take a look further into the week, Wednesday's forecast, much of the same. That precipitation is going to start to make its way further down south, as well as some mixed precipitation up in the west. Our low pressure systems are going to start to take over just a little bit, which means drier air is coming, as well as some more strange weather. Taking a look now at Thursday's forecast, those low pressure systems have officially taken over, which means lots more rain. We do have a slight risk for some tornadoes as we get further into the week as well. Down here in the Oklahoma and Texas area, severe thunderstorms are going to start to make their way, as well as some more amounts of mixed precipitation up to the west. That precipitation is only going to spread throughout most of the rest of the country, especially the further east you get. As we get up into the northeast areas, that's where we're going to start to see some chances of freezing rain and other forms of freezing precipitation. Taking a look now specifically at the extended forecast for the Lawrence area, like we said, Wednesday, high of 53 degrees up to 65 on Thursday, continuing to rise on Friday, high of 76, but storms all day long. So as nice as the temperature is going to be, the weather is not going to cooperate with us just yet. By Saturday, we've dropped back down to 53 degrees. By Sunday, we're up to 70, so lots of fluctuating temperatures. And by next Monday, we've risen all the way back up to 78 degrees. So it is going to start to feel like spring just a little bit, as on Tuesday, we're still in those mid-70s with 74. Like we said earlier, scattered storms. The potential for storms is mainly going to be Friday afternoon and next Tuesday afternoon. For Friday, afternoon showers are going to be more common, whereas next Tuesday, scattered storms all day long, with some possible chances for sunshine late in the weekend and early into next week. Well, that's all we have for weather this week. Stay tuned for after this break when Jacob Johnson will be here with all things sports.
Welcome back to your weekly recap of sports all over Indian country. I'm Jacob Johnson, and we do not have a lot today, but we still have some very exciting sports news. And starting off with the most exciting news, the women's basketball team has won the CAC championship for the second year in a row, going back-to-back being Georgia Gannett College, which is just an amazing accomplishment for Coach Strom and the rest of the squad. And speaking of that squad, 3 players were named to the CAC first team: Ivy Fox, Jessie White, and Mayana Dufresne. For the women's, Fox led the conference in points per game and field goals made, while Dufresne led the conference in overall points and 3 points made. On the men's side, White led the conference with points per game and total assists. Next up, the softball team, who are now 0-6 to start the season after losing 4 matches in the past week. But on the bright side, they will open their brand new stadium on Saturday of March 21st and will play a doubleheader against Heston College. And to top it off, let's take a look at the full results from the AMC Indoor Championships last week. We talked about the 2 gold medals and school records with Seth and Diami. But there were also 8 second-place times and a couple of third-place awards, so we should be very excited. So we should be seeing some very exciting stuff from the outdoor season. And with it being the last month of winter, I'm going to go outside, maybe take a walk or lay in a hammock. But that's all the sports we have for you this week, and make sure to stay tuned after the break for a roundup of some local events.
Good Morning Indian Country is supported by the University of Kansas William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communications.
One week from today, the Kansas City Indian Center is hosting Frybread Workshop Cultural Night. Backed by popular demand, the event will be March 10th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at the Rainbow Mennonite Church at 1444 Southwest Boulevard in Kansas City.
And Haskell Indian Nations University invites student, alumni, community members to visit an exhibition celebrating the creativity of student artists called Cycle Haskell Students Draw the News. Transforms today's headlines into powerful visual storytelling through illustration and reflection. The exhibition will be in display through March 25th at the Bourgeois Pig, located at East 9th Street in downtown Lawrence.
And Haskell Indian Nations University invites the local campus and local community to a powerful night honoring stories that connect generations. The event, titled Feeling the Gap, What Our Ancestors Reveal When We Listen, will be presented by Haskell's Thunderbird Theater. This evening of storytelling, poetry, and performance centers legacy, ancestry, and live experience through the voices of Gina Bardwell, Angelica Hagenbach, and Phyllis Becker. Plan to be part of this powerful performance on March 27th at 7 p.m. in the Haskell Auditorium. And thanks for watching this episode of Good Morning Indian Country. Another thank you to Press Forward, the Henry Luce Foundation, and of course the William Allen White School of Journalism for their support of our work.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Good Morning Indian Country. As always, stay good Indian Country, and we will see you next week.